Hello, world. It's John Pinto, your roving realtor, bon vivant video blogger, and I am here with Ted Stephanos of HomeGuard Natural Hazard Disclosures. How are you, Ted?
Hi, John. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine and dandy. And Rafael Betances with HomeGuard Roof Termite Home Inspection. How are you today, Rafael?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you once again
Very
for
good.
having us.
Excellent. Or should I say, ¿Cómo está usted?
That works too.
Good, good. I grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. You don't know about that. You know
Okay,
you grew up in a Puerto
okay.
Rican neighborhood when you have two friends named Righty Hiram and Lefty Hiram. Then you know it's the real thing. Then you know that the Italian actually grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. So let's talk a little bit about Megan's Law disclosure. I will wax poetic. I lived for 26 years in Negley Park, just on the perimeter of downtown San Jose. And we had a lot of halfway houses. So you'd have a certain amount of people that were released from prison, and they would go into the halfway houses. So, needless to say, we had more than our share of registered sex offenders in that neighborhood. And now that doesn't mean that it was, we had a monopoly on it. Registered sex offenders could live anywhere. But could you impart to us the Megan's Law disclosure, some of the things that it points out and how consumers should look at it?
Sure. So, what in the National Hazard Disclosure Report, NHD companies do provide a Megan's Law disclosure, and basically what the agent needs to provide to the buyer is the website address. So it's the state website address. Now, originally years ago, I've been in this business for 27 years, and this is kind of pre-internet days, but we just provided phone numbers of the sheriff's offices to contact, because now that we have the internet, of course, you can easily access this information online. In the old days, it was more like a CD-ROM, or you would have to go to a sheriff's department to find where registered sex offenders live. So, but today it's a lot of this information is readily available online. It's not a perfect site, because sometimes sex offenders don't register, and sometimes the information may be out of date, but that's what we have.
Well, I would guess, and please correct me if I am in error, that certain zip codes may have more of a concentration of registered sex offenders than others. Is that not correct?
That would be a very safe assumption.
And that might be because they're close to transportation hubs, or they have more larger, older properties that have been converted into SROs or some kind of community housing. Would you say that is still accurate?
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago on a couple of other videos. The standard of practice most of the time is you buy a house and then you look at all the disclosures and figure out whether or not there's any showstoppers in those disclosures. To a certain degree, if you have a lot of energy in avoiding an area that has a preponderance and high concentration of registered sex offenders, I would think it probably would serve you to become familiar with the site, drill down and see which zip codes might have a preponderance of registered sex offenders. Would you say that's a good idea?
Well, you're probably not going to find too many areas that don't have any. It'd be, there, and then also interpreting the data is important as well, because you may have somebody who's 45 years old as a registered sex offender, but they committed statutory rape when they were 18 with the 17-year-old, so they might not be considered a high risk person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I know
So
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, so you have situations where they might all be grouped into the same category as being on that Megan's Law website, but there are different risk levels, let's put it that way. So interpreting the information is important, as well as yeah, you can look at it, but it's going to be kind of hard to find areas that don't have any. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And conversely, you would agree that there might be other areas that are more impacted than the average area. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we got to be. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, I guess it's easy to generalize this because it's. I think it's pretty safe to say if you're in an area that has multi-million-dollar homes and you're away from densely packed housing, chances are you're going to have a much less percentage of registered sex offenders living in those very high-end areas as you would in other, like, more urbanized areas.
Right, because those properties have not been repurposed as communal living spaces. Right, right. So,
Sure.
yeah. So, I think, yeah, the point is made, and definitely the more suburban, the more spread out, the more expensive, the less of an issue you're going to have. So, is there any takeaway that you would like to impart to the viewing audience on what is important when they're looking at the Megan's Law?
Well, it's a great example of the fact that these natural hazard disclosure reports, you don't just want to gloss through them really quickly or just look at the statutory page, see everything, check no, and just move on to the next thing. You want to read the full report and really look at that, because usually the Megan's Law information might be buried like on page 10 or something like that. But that might be the most important thing in the report, to read that information, interpret it, do a little research on your own if you like, and then take advantage of that information that we're providing.
Okay, so word to the wise, sit down, have a cup of coffee, put your feet up, and scroll through the report, and don't be afraid to drill down on the details. Excellent. And if they want more information on any of this, Ted, how do they access your website?
Yeah, anyone can go to HomeGuard.com and click on the natural hazard disclosure portion of the website, and you can order reports there, and we have a lot of information about what's in our reports as well.
Good. Likewise, Rafael, how do people contact you regarding questions or ordering roof termite home inspection?
You can actually go on the website and order right through there, or if you would like to speak about it or have any questions I need answer, I'm happy to have a conversation, or you can text me at 707-616-8762, or you can email me at rbetances@homeguard.com.
Thank you, gentlemen, for imparting all that information, and thank you all for looking at our video. We'll see you on the next page.